My name is Ethan. I'm 26. I was married for 3 years to a woman who never once touched me, not because she hated me, but because that was the deal. The paycheck was generous. The silence was part of the contract. And today, it ends. I live in a villa that doesn't feel like mine. It never did. Perched above the bay with glass walls and polished marble floors, it echoes with a kind of quiet you don't speak into. My name isn't on any deed. My toothbrush lives in the guest bathroom. My meals are eaten at a table where no one talks. And my job, because that's what it was to be present, pleasant, and forgettable. Lisa never liked questions. She liked order. Precision. Things that didn't shift beneath her heels. When she hired me, she said she needed a husband. Not a partner. Not a friend. Just a legal husband, for appearances. I was 23, broke, fresh out of college. She was 29, powerful, unreadable, and offering a contract that could buy back my past and fund my future. I signed. No touching. No intimacy. No claim to her wealth, family, or name. Just 3 years of existing next to her, wearing a ring that meant nothing. The media called her untouchable. She was. She didn't bring lovers home. She never crossed boundaries. And I never dared ask what kept her out so late, hair tousled, perfume faded, lipstick blurred faintly along her jawline like a secret whispered too close. I cooked. I cleaned. I smiled when necessary. I learned not to flinch when her keys hit the counter like punctuation. Sometimes I'd hear her heels pause outside my door, and then continue down the hall without a word. It was never my place to wonder. For 3 years, I lived among shadows I couldn't name. The second floor was hers entirely, off limits. Not even the cleaning staff went up without permission. Once, I stood at the bottom of the stairs, hand on the railing, tempted by nothing more than curiosity. But the thought of breaching that boundary felt like standing on ice above deep, black water. I stepped back. I always stepped back. Today, the contract expires. At noon tomorrow, I'll be divorced. Technically. Legally. Officially. Though the marriage was never real in the ways that count. Outside, the light shifts gold across the water. The windows catch the last edge of the sun and bend it into soft orange against the floor. My suitcase is packed in the corner. Just one bag. Everything I brought into this house fits in it. Everything I gained won't. I move through the kitchen without thinking, olive oil warming, garlic crisping, the rhythm of chopping anchoring me. The smell is warm, nostalgic. I remember the first dinner I cooked for her, creamy risotto, roasted fennel, pan-seared scallops. She said it reminded her of something she'd tasted in Sicily. I never asked if she'd really been there. I just nodded and filed the moment away. Tonight, I make the same dish. Same pace. Same wine from the cellar, Cabernet, smooth and aged like everything in this house but me. I don't light candles. I don't set the table romantically. I just cook. Not for show. Not for love. But because I need to remember that I existed here. That I fed this space even when it didn't feed me back. There's no sound except for the ticking clock and the simmering pan. She texted me hours ago. Make something extra tonight. We'll have a farewell drink. Just like that. Casual. Efficient. I wipe my hands on a linen cloth, then fold it neatly. Everything here must remain perfect. Tomorrow, I walk away from the woman I never touched. Tonight, I serve her one last meal. Not because she asked. Because I need to. Lisa Thorne was already a name before I learned how to pronounce it correctly. A tech empire wrapped in cashmere, she'd built her company from one failed prototype and 3 sleepless years in a downtown apartment. By the time I met her, she was 32, ruling boardrooms with a voice that never cracked. She wore power the way most people wore coats, tailored, deliberate, and seasonless. I was 23 when we signed the contract. fresh out of Penn State with a dual degree in software engineering and debt. My resume was solid, my suit cheap, and my eyes too green to hide my hunger. I hadn't applied for a job. I was scouted, though I didn't know it then. A man in a Navy car, sunglasses on indoors, asked me a series of questions that had nothing to do with engineering and everything to do with loyalty, privacy, and restraint. Days later, I met Lisa in a penthouse suite. She stood with her back to the window, city lights drawing a halo around her frame. She didn't smile when she saw me. She nodded, once. "Ethan," she said. "This is a transaction. Not a fairy tale." I didn't ask why she needed a husband. I didn't ask who would believe it. I didn't even ask what she was running from, because part of me already knew she wasn't running. She was fortifying. She needed a wall. And I was brick-shaped. We married at City Hall with 2 signatures, no photos, and a silence that felt like a locked box between us. I was told the rules plainly. No romantic entanglement. No crossing into her private quarters. No speaking about the arrangement to anyone. No expectation of inclusion in her personal or professional life. The contract was for 3 years. I was paid monthly. Bonus incentives for press appearances, charity galas, and holiday photos. But it wasn't the money that kept me in line. It was the precision of it all, the way Lisa constructed a life without cracks. You couldn't rebel against a machine that never malfunctioned. In those early days, I lived like a tenant. Quiet, careful, always one step behind her shadow. I was given a room that looked like a showroom. All white. All glass. Every item symmetrical. I rearranged nothing. I left no trace. But routines have a way of softening walls. Mornings, I'd hear her heels on the floor above me, measured clicks like metronome beats. She left at 7:20 sharp. Coffee untouched. She liked it dark, bitter, left on the counter in a double-walled glass cup. I learned the temperature she preferred it at without asking. She never said thank you. She drank it anyway. At night, she sometimes came home late, hair immaculate, scent faintly floral with an undertone of wine. Her lipstick rarely smeared, except when she'd been out longer than usual. I never asked. I never wanted to know. Dinner was never expected, but always prepared. I'd leave a covered plate on the marble counter. Occasionally, she'd join me. We'd sit opposite ends of the long glass table. Music low in the background, classical, unless she was tired, then lo-fi jazz. She'd eat slowly, never complimenting the food, but sometimes I'd see her glance at her plate like she wanted to. Once, she said, "Your risotto is better than the hotel's." I didn't respond. I just memorized the recipe. On weekends, I played guitar on the balcony. Not for her. For myself. But I'd catch her lingering in the hallway, half-shadowed behind the curtain, eyes distant, hands clasped in front of her like she wasn't sure what to do with them. I never played love songs. Just melodies. Calm. Simple. Safe. She had one assistant. Patricia. Always by her side during meetings, events, and impromptu dinners with shareholders. Patricia was efficient, soft-spoken, and rarely made eye contact with me. But I noticed the subtle things. How Lisa's voice changed when Patricia entered the room, less clipped, almost warmer. How they stood closer than necessary. How Patricia once adjusted the hem of Lisa's sleeve before a press conference, fingers lingering half a second longer than needed. I wasn't foolish. I'd been hired to protect an image. I didn't need to know the shape of the truth beneath it. My own routines anchored me. Morning workouts in the gym Lisa never used. Cooking with quiet precision. Reading her company's white papers just to understand the world I hovered around. Volunteering at a youth center twice a month under a name she didn't know I used. And music. Always music. It kept my hands from shaking when the silence got too loud. There was a period, maybe 6 months in, where I thought she might say something. A night where she lingered after dinner, sipping wine with one knee pulled up on the sofa, head resting back against the cushion. I brought out a fruit platter without asking. She looked at it. Looked at me. Said nothing. But she ate it all. The villa was beautiful, soulless, and vast. I memorized every creak in the wooden panels, every shift in temperature from sunrise to dusk. But I never once went upstairs. Not even when she traveled for business. I didn't want to break the spell. I didn't want to become a question mark in her mind. 3 years passed like breath held underwater. No fights. No accidents. No slip-ups. We were clean. Legal. Distant. 2 satellites in mutual orbit. And now, it's over. Tomorrow, we dissolve. She'll wire the final sum. I'll sign the documents. No ceremony. No goodbyes. Tonight is the last supper. One last meal between ghosts who once shared air. At exactly 2:03 p.m., Lisa called. I had just finished folding the last of my clothes, neatly, precisely, like I always did. The call rang once before I answered. Ethan, she said, her voice even as always, you remember what tomorrow is, right? I kept my tone just as calm. I do. The contract expires. Good. A pause. Then, make something extra tonight. We'll have a drink. A farewell. Her voice carried no inflection. If there was something beneath the surface, it was buried too deep for me to reach. The line went dead before I could reply. I didn't bother overthinking it. Lisa didn't do emotion. She did schedules, clean exits, precision. She didn't like messes. I wasn't going to become one now, not after 3 clean years. At 5 o'clock, I returned from a visit to the Southside Youth Center, the only place I went without needing permission or a reason. The director smiled when I left, told me I had a way with the kids. I didn't explain that they were the only ones who looked me in the eyes without expecting something. I started dinner without delay. I recreated the exact meal from our first night in the villa, risotto with lemon zest, roasted fennel, seared scallops. I added 2 of her recent favorites, grilled asparagus and that strange ginger lime tart she always ate halfway and left the fork resting crooked on the plate. Lisa arrived at 7:30 p.m. sharp. She came in quietly, her coat over one arm, flanked by Patricia and her driver Edward. Her eyes flicked over me once before she nodded at them. You can go home. Pick me up early tomorrow. Yes, Miss Thorne, they echoed. Then they were gone. She turned to me. I'm going upstairs to change. Get dinner ready. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. She never had to. Her authority wasn't something you challenged, it moved around her like a gravitational field. By the time she came down, the table was set. She'd changed into flat slippers, a navy cardigan, and loose silk pants, comfort clothes. Her hair was down, falling freely for the first time in weeks. She looked younger. Not warm, but softened, like a steel statue caught in late sunlight. I stood to greet her. She waved it off. Sit. Then, she walked past me and straight to the wine cellar. She pulled a bottle of Napa Cabernet from the 3rd row. Let me, I stepped forward. She handed it to me wordlessly. I opened it, poured 2 glasses, and placed one by her hand. To 3 years of quiet, she said, glass raised. To 3 years, I echoed. She sipped, then set the glass down. You did well. Thank you. I mean it. You played your role exactly as I needed. I nodded once. You were always clear. She stared at me. Just for a second too long. Then she looked away. Tomorrow, we'll go to City Hall, finalize everything. My lawyers have expedited the process. No delays. Understood. After dinner, she remained seated, glass in hand, eyes fixed on something behind me. She didn't speak, didn't thank me. She didn't need to. Her silence was always louder than her words. I cleaned up quietly. By the time I returned, she was watching some drama on the massive wall-mounted TV, something about a billionaire family imploding. "Come sit," she said without looking. I obeyed, placing the fruit platter between us. She ignored it. "You packed already?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes. I didn't want to do it in the morning. It's been a while since I heard you play. Will you?" I stood, retrieved my guitar, tuned it slowly while she turned off the TV. "What do you want to hear?" "Anything." I played. And she listened. For an hour, maybe more. Her eyes never left me, but her thoughts were somewhere I couldn't follow. At 11 p.m., she stood. "Get some rest, Ethan." "Good night, Lisa." I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my chest heavy with something that had no name. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't relief. It was unfinished. At 8 a.m., we sat side by side in City Hall. We signed quietly. The papers were crisp, the ink was black, and the stamp landed with a finality I wasn't ready for. Lisa didn't flinch. She stood with elegance, thanked the clerk, and turned to me. "The money should already be in your account." It was. 7 figures. Transferred in full. I didn't check the exact amount. I didn't need to. She was never careless with her promises. She nodded once. "Goodbye, Ethan." Goodbye. No hug. No handshake. Just her figure walking away, each step measured, every piece of her still untouchable. Her driver took me back to the villa. I picked up my bag, locked the door behind me, and checked into a quiet hotel with no view. It was there, sitting on the edge of a too-clean bed, that I opened my banking app. The number stared back at me, too many digits to feel real. Then something happened. The screen flickered. A message appeared, not from any app one recognized. "System initialized. Binding complete. Welcome, Ethan." Before I could react, a new window opened. Main questline, Livestream survival missions. Instructions scrolled, stream your journey. Complete challenges. Rewards will be issued. Physical and mental enhancements included. First mission, solo ascent of Stormspine Ridge. Difficulty, moderate. Objective, reach the summit. Bonus objective, engage audience. A second ping. System connected stream platform, activated. Channel, Ethan Stonelive. I stared. This had to be a scam. Then I checked my old Twitch login. It was there. Open. Connected. The overlay loaded itself. The camera turned on without my laptop giving permission. I spoke one word aloud, "What?" A viewer joined instantly. Username, top floor view. They typed, "Are you really climbing Stormspine Ridge alone?" I stared at the comment. Then another message followed, "Sounds dangerous. Good luck." They sent a $10 donation. I blinked. Laughed. A strange, exhausted laugh that echoed in the quiet room. This was insane. But I was no longer tied to a contract. No longer invisible. No longer silent. The system chimed again. Mission countdown, 48 hours. And just like that, I had a purpose. Lisa, somewhere in a high-rise office, sipped her espresso. Her secretary walked in with a tablet. "Miss Thorne, you asked to be notified if Mr. Stone made any public appearance." She handed over the screen. Lisa's eyes narrowed. "Ethan. Live. Hiking gear. Talking to strangers." A small smile pulled at the corner of her lips. She tapped the screen. Created a new account. Username, top floor view. And clicked follow. Stormspine Ridge was supposed to be a 2-day climb. It took me just over 20 hours. The system enhanced my stamina after the first 6 miles, granting me enough endurance to move without collapsing. It didn't make the cold disappear or the weight of the pack feel like feathers. It just made it bearable. Sharp. Real. I bled when I fell. I bruised when I slipped. But I didn't stop. The live stream went quiet for long stretches. I wasn't one of those over-energetic influencers who babbled through every moment. I climbed. I breathed. I pushed forward. And still, top floor view stayed. They sent small donations, 10 here, 20 there, always with quiet messages. Looks cold. Stay steady. Watch your right footing next time. Nice pace. Good breath control. It was strange how clinical their words were. Like someone used to performance reviews, not encouragement. I started looking for their comments. I told myself it was just algorithm familiarity, but I knew better. The system upgraded my grip strength after I reached the summit. I didn't notice at first, until I hung from a boulder the next day with one hand and didn't panic. Each completed mission made me sharper. My balance improved. My breathing adjusted to altitude. My sleep was deeper, dreamless. The aches faded faster. But the silence remained. In the wilderness, silence isn't peaceful. It's loud. It presses in. It asks questions you've buried under concrete and contract clauses. I needed something to fight it. So I started drawing again. I bought a sketch pad from a corner store in a town with 2 working street lamps and a bar that smelled like rain and regret. I didn't plan to draw her. But my hand didn't ask permission. The first sketch was of Lisa the way I remembered her that first night, hair up, black turtleneck, one hand on a wine glass, not smiling, not frowning, just existing in perfect control. I drew her again 2 days later. This time, barefoot in the villa, holding a cup of coffee she never drank. By the 4th drawing, I'd stopped pretending it was for practice. I didn't know the system had opened a private backdoor, an unlisted stream only visible to my top supporter. I didn't know Lisa sat in her office long after midnight, the lights dim, her eyes locked on the screen as I moved my pencil carefully over the page, shading the slope of her jaw. "You brat," she whispered once to herself. "That doesn't even look like me." But she never looked away. Patricia noticed the change first. "You're smiling at your phone again," she said one afternoon as they waited in the conference room. "That's rare." Lisa didn't look up. "Just a stream I've been following." Patricia glanced over. "That mountaineer guy?" Lisa didn't answer. "He's good," Patricia continued. "Growing fast. Clean image. Humble tone. The audience likes him." Lisa closed the app. "He's disciplined." "That's one word for it," Patricia said, arching a brow. "Or maybe you just miss your husband." Lisa's eyes sharpened. "Ex-husband." "Right." Lisa didn't respond. But that night, she topped the donation leaderboard with a gift package worth $5,000. The system celebrated it with a cascade of animated confetti. Ethan, in a tent somewhere near a frozen lake, thanked Top Floor View with a tired smile. He never knew. More days passed. Ethan crossed rivers, deserts, glacial fields. He rarely spoke on stream unless prompted. But when he did, his words carried weight. His audience grew from dozens to thousands. People called him the silent trekker. They admired his focus. His calm. But Lisa wasn't just watching as a fan. She watched like someone trying to memorize him before he vanished. At a press gala in Tokyo, Lisa stood beside Edward Calder, sharp suit, clean grin, the kind of man who looked polished even at midnight. He'd been suggested by her board as a potential successor. Younger than Lisa by a few years. Efficient. Strategic. Ambitious enough to smile without blinking. "You're distracted," Edward said as they waited for the flash of cameras to die down. "I'm not," Lisa replied smoothly. Your stock ticked up 3 points yesterday. Market likes that you're considering a transition." She sipped her drink, eyes on a notification that lit up her private phone. Ethan Stonelive, now streaming, diving below the glacier. Edward followed her gaze. I read about that guy. Your type? Lisa didn't flinch. I don't have a type. You had a husband once. She turned slowly. I had a contract. And now? She gave him a look that didn't blink. Now I have peace. He raised his hands in mock surrender, but his smile remained too controlled to be sincere. Patricia, standing across the room, watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. Back on the stream, Ethan sat near a frozen lake, testing the seal on his oxygen gear. His fingers moved with confidence. His voice was soft when he addressed the chat. Going down soon. Water's cold. Visibility's bad. Wish me luck. Top floor view sent a comment, be careful. No heroics. He smiled faintly. I'll try. Then he vanished beneath the surface. The stream shimmered with crystal clarity as the system's camera tracked him through the depths. The chat buzzed. Lisa watched in perfect stillness, her breath held every time he swam out of frame. Ethan came up 30 minutes later, shivering but whole. His reward appeared, a 2% wealth increase and mastery in free diving. Made it, he said into the mic, thanks for sticking around. Lisa shut her laptop slowly. Patricia entered the room. You're not sleeping again. I'm managing. He doesn't know, does he? Lisa looked up. Know what? That you never stopped watching. Lisa said nothing. Patricia exhaled. You think letting him go made you strong. But you didn't let him go. You put him on a stage and told yourself you weren't clapping. Lisa's silence stretched into the air like fog. Patricia walked out. That night, Lisa made a second burner account. Then a third. Just to make sure Ethan never saw who really kept him afloat. She didn't follow him out of guilt. She followed because no one else could. Because no one else would understand what it meant when he sat by the fire and sketched her face again, this time, smiling. The climb through the northern spine of Aoraki had been brutal. Steep angles, ice falls, weather that shifted faster than thought. Ethan had been climbing for 16 hours straight when the avalanche hit. Not a full roar, but a cracking tremor. A shelf broke 20 meters above him. Snow like liquid glass poured down. Viewers screamed in the chat. A blur of emotes. Warnings. Panic. Lisa didn't move. She watched the moment unfold from her office, fingers frozen over her keyboard, eyes locked to the screen. The feed shook violently before stabilizing. The system's camera focused, Ethan was pressed tight to the side wall, one arm shielding his head, a split gash above his brow leaking red. He was breathing. Alive. Lisa exhaled sharply, as if she'd been underwater. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone, but Patricia was already standing at the door. You were going to tell me eventually, she said quietly. Weren't you? Lisa didn't respond. I've worked beside you for 7 years, Patricia went on. I've seen your silences. I've seen who you avoid talking about. I knew before you knew. Lisa closed the laptop. This isn't about him, she said, too fast. Then why do you stop breathing every time his stream drops signal? Patricia's voice wasn't angry, just tired. You used to live like marble, Lisa. Now you live like glass. Lisa stood, crossing to the window. Outside, the city was dusted in fog. The reflection of herself in the glass looked unfamiliar. You said once I never let anyone in, Lisa murmured. That it was my strength. It was your armor, Patricia replied. But it stopped being strength the moment you started watching that stream every night and pretending it was nothing. Lisa turned to face her. What do you want me to say? Patricia stepped forward. Say it. Say you love him. Lisa's mouth opened, but no sound came. Patricia's expression cracked, not in anger, but in something sadder. We had our moment, she said softly. You and I. But you were never truly mine. I think part of me always knew I was holding someone else's space. Lisa looked down. You meant everything to me. I know, Patricia said. But not the way he does. Even if you won't admit it to yourself. Silence fell like snow between them. Then Patricia touched her shoulder, gentle, final, and walked away. That night, Lisa didn't speak to anyone. She didn't attend the strategy call with her board. She didn't review projections. She sat on her balcony, tablet in hand, watching Ethan patch his wound in a snow cave with frozen fingers and quiet resolve. He never complained. Never begged the camera for sympathy. Just worked through the pain like someone who had learned a long time ago that no one was coming. She messaged him. Lisa, are you all right? That fall looked worse than you let on. He replied 20 minutes later. Ethan, I'm good. Been through worse. She hesitated, fingers hovering. Lisa, you looked lonely in that last one. His response came slower this time. Ethan, hard to feel lonely when you've got strangers cheering you on. She stared at that sentence longer than she should have. Strangers. It was what she had become. Later that week, she sent another message. Lisa, you ever wonder why people watch you climb things they're too scared to face themselves? Ethan, maybe they're just waiting for someone to fall. Lisa, or maybe they're waiting for someone to survive. She began sending higher donations again. Not from her main burner anymore. From top floor view. Ethan started noticing. Noticing the way the phrasing felt familiar. The timing of the messages. The pauses between sentences. He told himself it was just coincidence. That not every efficient sentence in the world had to belong to her. But then one night, after descending into a canyon lit only by his headlamp, he checked his private sketch stream. The system logged a single viewer. Username, top floor view. He stopped drawing midline. He stared at the screen. The camera didn't move. No messages came through. But his hands had already slowed. He drew her eyes next, sharp, unreadable, and too real. His breath caught. The memory that came was from the second year of their contract. A power outage. The backup generator had failed. They ate dinner by candlelight, silent, both too proud to mention how strange it felt. When he brought out dessert, she watched him closely and said, You know, Ethan, if you weren't so good at being quiet, you'd probably make a terrible husband. He'd smiled then. Not because it was funny. Because it was the only time she'd ever said the word husband. He looked back at the stream. Top floor view, he said aloud. You ever get tired of watching? A message appeared seconds later. Only when you stop drawing. He didn't sleep that night. The next day, the system issued a new mission, desert terrain, 200-mile trek, solo. Dangerous. Brutal. Ethan accepted without hesitation. Lisa watched him begin the journey. Watched him walk into sandstorms, face cracked winds, dehydration, and heat mirages. Every time the stream glitched, she sat rigid until it returned. Every time he passed a milestone, she sent another gift. Edward noticed. At a board dinner, he leaned in over champagne and whispered, You're still watching him, aren't you? Lisa didn't answer. You're the woman who hired a husband to control a narrative, he said. But now the story's gotten away from you. Lisa met his eyes. Control was never the point. No? Edward leaned back. Then why do you look like you're holding your breath every time someone mentions his name? Lisa finished her drink. Because sometimes, she said, breathing feels dangerous. The mission appeared just past midnight, pulsing faintly on Ethan's HUD. System directive, enter the Serpent's Vein, deep jungle. Objective, locate the downed research unit. Secondary objective, stream entire journey. Estimated survival odds, 17%. Accept? Ethan stared at it. The coordinates placed the site in an unmarked region, dense, humid, full of warnings from governments and jungle guides alike. It was a place whispered about in explorer circles, often followed by silence. He clicked accept. The system chimed. Far away in a penthouse in Shanghai, Lisa jolted upright in bed. Her phone buzzed violently with the alert she'd configured months ago. Ethan Stonelev, jungle mission initiated, Serpent's Vein. She bolted from bed, grabbed her coat, and was out the door before her hair had fully dried. At headquarters, she stormed through the private floor where Patricia had just wrapped up a late meeting. You sent it, didn't you? Lisa's voice was low, sharp. Patricia set her pen down slowly. I didn't send anything. The system chose him. You knew this would happen. You fed it intel. Gave it coordinates. Patricia didn't deny it. He's the only one who can do it. Lisa's fingers curled into fists. He isn't a mercenary. He's not disposable. You think I don't know that? Patricia's voice cracked. But I've waited 9 years for a lead. My father vanished in that jungle. Not during war or crisis, during a research mission. His plane disappeared from radar just like Edward's mentor did. Everyone wrote them off. Buried the file. Except me. Lisa's anger didn't soften. So you're using Ethan? I'm trusting him, Patricia said. And you are too. Or you wouldn't be here yelling at me at 2 a.m. Lisa turned away, unable to answer. The silence between them was familiar now, layered, dense. This time, Patricia was the one who broke it. If he doesn't come back, it's on me, she said quietly. But he deserves to choose. Lisa looked down at her phone, watching Ethan's stream loading. He was already at the jungle edge, securing gear. Alone. She swallowed hard. He always chooses wrong when it comes to pain. The jungle greeted Ethan like a living beast. Thick vines choked the sky. The air was wet, clinging to his lungs. Every step felt swallowed by something ancient. The system displayed subtle environmental markers, temperature, humidity, elevation shifts, but it didn't warn him about the feeling in his chest. That this wasn't just a mission. It was closure. Someone else's, maybe. Lisa's. Patricia's. Maybe even his. The first days were grueling. Insects, heat rash, sudden storms, night sounds that scraped against sleep. The chat filled with anxious viewers, all watching Ethan push deeper into green that swallowed light. And as always, top floor view was there, silent, constant, unblinking. By day 4, he'd stopped trying to speak on stream. His energy was spent on moving, mapping, surviving. The camera picked up every breath, every strain of muscle, every twitch of pain. On day 6, he found it. A metal shard, half buried under moss and roots. Then another. A broken wingtip, a mangled logo. The remains of a small research aircraft. The chat froze. Donations stopped. Then, movement. A man emerged, gaunt, eyes wide and sun-starved, wrapped in fabric torn from old uniforms. He carried a spear fashioned from a stripped-down landing gear strut. His skin was sun-leathered. His beard, wild. But his eyes were alive. Ethan lowered his pack slowly. I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to bring you home. The man didn't answer. He pointed toward the sky and then to his chest, like he was reminding himself he was still real. Then he stumbled and collapsed. Ethan caught him. The system pinged. Secondary objective unlocked, identity verification required. Ethan opened his own notepad, writing a name, Dr. Arthur Hahn. The man's head snapped up. He nodded. Back in Shanghai, Lisa watched the stream as the man wept in Ethan's arms. She stood, already calling the charter jet. By the time Ethan returned to the jungle edge, guiding the fragile survivor step by step, the world had caught on. The chat was bursting. News headlines had broken out. Missing scientist found after a decade, live streamer discovers long-lost expedition leader. Lisa was waiting on the tarmac. She wore no makeup. Her coat was too large on her frame, Her hair was pulled back in a way Ethan had never seen. She looked younger. Realer. Terrified. He stepped off the chopper, shirt soaked, eyes hollow from the weight of what he'd seen. Then he saw her. She didn't speak. She walked straight to him. And hugged him. The crowd of reporters gasped. The chat erupted in chaos. Ethan stood frozen, her arms around him for the first time in over 3 years. The woman who had hired him to be an ornament now held him like something sacred. He slowly raised his arms. Wrapped them around her. Pulled her in, breath shaking. She buried her face against his shoulder. "You idiot. You could have died. You watched," he whispered. "Every stream." She nodded into his neck. "I never missed one." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "Let's do it again, Lisa." Her brows lifted slightly. "But for real this time," he said. She blinked. Then smiled. And kissed him. The chat exploded. The moment went viral before their lips even parted. The second wedding was quiet. There were no photographers, no gala press release, no curated floral arrangements flown in from Switzerland. Just 2 folding chairs on a sunlit hill, a notary from the local registry, and a small circle of people who understood the truth of what this moment meant. Ethan wore a plain linen shirt. Lisa wore a soft dove-gray dress that moved when the breeze touched it. No designer label. No armor. They exchanged vows written the night before on napkins in a quiet hotel room, bare feet brushing under the sheets as they whispered the words aloud, unsure if they were practicing or already promising. "I married you once because it was practical," Ethan said now, voice steady despite the wind. "This time, I marry you because the thought of a day without you is unbearable." Lisa didn't cry. She never had, even at her loneliest. But something shimmered behind her eyes as she took his hands. "I told myself I needed control," she said softly. "But it turns out what I needed was you. Wild, stubborn, loyal to your own fault. I don't want a contract. I want you, every unreasonable, maddening part of you." Patricia stood beside them as witness. No longer assistant. No longer the quiet shadow. She hugged Lisa after the ceremony, briefly, firmly. "You deserve this," she said. "So do you," Lisa replied. Patricia stepped back, smiling through the goodbye. "I think I'm going back to the field. Humanitarian tech. There's a team in Morocco that needs someone who understands logistics and doesn't scare easily." Lisa nodded. "They're lucky." Edward came too, dressed in a charcoal suit, not as a rival, but as someone who had quietly read the writing on the wall. "Congratulations," he said, offering his hand to Ethan. "You gave the world something real." "I didn't do it alone," Ethan said, shaking his hand. She watched every step. Edward turned to Lisa. "Still think letting go of the company is smart?" Lisa smiled. "I don't want to manage people anymore. I want to manage the only man I've never been able to predict." The company was sold within the month. Quietly, without fuss. Lisa retained board influence but gave up the throne. Her only stipulation was a non-negotiable clause: no interference in Ethan's channel. The news broke quietly. The media speculated wildly. But Lisa never responded to questions. She didn't need to. Ethan's stream changed. Not in tone, but in presence. He still hiked the impossible, swam the deadly, climbed the unreachable. But now, sometimes, the camera would pan slightly, and Lisa would be there. At first, she stood off-screen, offering water, checking wind speeds, silently handing him gear. Later, she appeared briefly, crossing rivers beside him, laughing when he slipped, catching him mid-rant with an arched brow and a dry comment. Chat went feral when they realized who Top Floor View had always been. She never confirmed it. Never denied it either. They worked well together. She organized. He wandered. She translated weather patterns into plans. He translated loneliness into purpose. Together, they made it feel less like survival and more like something holy. The followers grew by the millions. Not just because of the danger. Because people wanted to believe that second chances existed. That the person who once signed you out of their life could someday sign their name again, on a vow, not a contract. 1 year later, Ethan bought a cabin overlooking a lake in Finland. They stayed there for a month. Lisa learned to cook. Ethan failed at ice fishing. They argued over which books to keep and who snored louder. They laughed more than they ever had in 3 years of marriage. One night, the camera wasn't streaming. They sat on the floor beside the fire. Ethan pulled out his sketch pad. "You haven't drawn in weeks," Lisa said, tucking her feet beneath her. "I was waiting for the right moment," he murmured, pencil already dancing across the page. She watched. Not from a distance. Not from behind a screen. Right beside him. "What are you drawing?" "You," he said. "The way you look when you're not performing. When you just are." She leaned against his shoulder. "Do I look better or worse that way?" He smiled. "More real." She didn't speak after that. The fire cracked. The lake shimmered under moonlight. The page filled slowly, delicately. He added the soft curve of her cheek. The loose strands of her hair. The way her fingers curled unconsciously when she was thinking. She rested her chin on his arm, watching her image come alive. "You never used to look at me like this," she whispered. "I never had the right," he replied. She looked up. "You do now." He kissed her forehead. She closed her eyes. The next day, they packed their gear. A new mission was waiting, an ancient cave system in Eastern Europe. Lisa reviewed the maps. Ethan tuned his ropes. The system pinged quietly. New quest, shadow beneath the mountain. Bonus objective, face it together. Ethan smiled. "Ready?" he asked, tightening the last strap on her pack. Lisa smirked. "I was born ready." They stepped into the world again. Side by side. This time, not alone. Not contracted. Not pretending. Just real. And as they vanished into the cave's mouth, the sketchbook remained on the cabin table, open to the final page. A soft charcoal drawing of a woman looking directly at the artist, her hand on his shoulder, her eyes both familiar and new. She was once his boss. Then his ghost. Now, she's his map. Ending.